What happens when the one place you trusted to keep you safe stops being safe? That is the question hanging over central Iran right now, because a single bomb just answered it in the worst possible way. Before we go deeper into this, let's make a quick deal. You watch, I explain, and you help this video reach people who actually want facts instead of noise. So tap that like button now. It takes 1 second, but it tells this platform to push real analysis to real people. Hit subscribe if this is your first time here, and if you have a friend who keeps asking, wait, what's actually happening in Iran, send them this video instead of typing out a paragraph. Now let's get into it. For years, Iran built its entire military identity around one simple idea. If you dig deep enough into a mountain, nothing above ground can touch you. Not a fighter jet, not a missile, not a satellite watching from space. That idea shaped how an entire country planned its defense. Missiles, launch systems, and production lines were pushed underground, tucked behind tunnels drilled through solid rock, protected by hundreds of feet of stone and reinforced concrete. It wasn't paranoia. It was strategy. Every major military power in the region knew where Iran's factories and bases were on the surface. So Iran simply stopped keeping its most valuable weapons on the surface. That strategy worked for decades. It survived sanctions, survived sabotage attempts, survived years of quiet tension. Underground storage became Iran's version of a bank vault, and the mountains near Isfahan became one of its biggest vaults of all. This wasn't just a bunker. It was reportedly one of the largest missile assembly and storage complexes in the entire country, built specifically to survive an air war that Iran always assumed might come one day. Then that day arrived, and the footage coming out right now shows something that should genuinely worry anyone who understood how confident Iran was in that mountain. Watch the clip closely and you'll notice something strange. This isn't a quick flash of light followed by smoke drifting away. This explosion keeps going. It rolls. It pulses. Fire and pressure vent out of the mountain shafts again and again, almost like the ground itself is breathing fire in short bursts. That is not normal surface damage. That is the signature of something detonating deep inside a structure, not on top of it. Here's why that detail matters so much. When a bomb explodes on the surface, the blast spreads outward in every direction and loses power fast. But when a weapon is built to punch through rock and concrete before exploding, the pressure has nowhere to go except back through the tunnels, shafts, and access points of the facility itself. If that facility happened to be packed with missile fuel, warheads, and ammunition, every explosion triggers another one nearby. What you're watching isn't one bomb. It's one bomb starting a chain reaction that the facility's own contents finish for it. The weapon behind this is reportedly the GBU-72, a 5,000-pound precision-guided bunker buster that the U.S. Air Force added to its arsenal a few years back, built to be carried by fighter aircraft like the F-15E Strike Eagle. And understanding why this specific bomb matters means understanding a gap that existed in modern warfare for a long time. Picture military bunker-busting weapons like a set of tools ranked by size. At the very top, you have massive specialized bombs, so heavy that only a handful of aircraft in the world, mainly stealth bombers, can even carry them. These are reserved for the deepest, most hardened targets on the planet, and using one is a huge operational decision, not something you do casually or often. At the bottom end, you have smaller, lighter bombs that work fine against basic bunkers, but simply can't punch through serious mountain rock or thick reinforced concrete. For years, that gap in the middle was Iran's opportunity. Build deep enough, and you sit safely above the smaller weapons, but below the radar of the massive ones, because nobody wants to burn a rare stealth bomber mission on every single tunnel entrance scattered across a mountain range. The GBU-72 exists specifically to close that gap. It's heavy enough to tear through serious rock and concrete, yet light enough to be carried by regular fighter jets that are already stationed nearby and ready to fly at a moment's notice. That single detail quietly rewrites the entire math of this war. Think about what that means operationally. A commander doesn't need to plan a rare, high-value mission from a base thousands of miles away anymore. If intelligence confirms a target today, a strike package built around fighters like the F-15E can be in the air within hours, deliver the exact weapon needed, and be gone before the site can react. Speed used to be the one advantage deeply buried facilities had. That advantage is shrinking fast. Now let's talk about how this bomb actually works, because the engineering here is honestly the most important part of this entire story. A bunker buster isn't designed to explode on impact. If it did, it would waste almost all of its force blowing up loose dirt and surface rock, doing basically nothing to whatever is buried underneath. Instead, these weapons are built with an incredibly hardened steel shell, strong enough to survive slamming into the ground at extreme speed without breaking apart. Inside sits a delayed fuse smart enough to count through layers of density as the bomb tears downward, waiting until it senses it has reached the actual target before it finally detonates. Reports on this weapon's capability suggest it can push through around 100 feet of packed earth, or more than 20 feet of solid reinforced concrete before going off. Just sit with that for a second. Iran didn't build shallow bunkers. It built what were basically underground fortress cities, designed with the assumption that anything short of the absolute heaviest weapons in existence simply could not reach that deep. A bomb like this doesn't care about those outer defensive layers. It ignores them completely and detonates exactly where the missiles, the fuel, and the warheads were supposed to be perfectly safe. There's also a guidance detail worth understanding, because it shows how far precision warfare has come. This weapon can be aimed using satellite coordinates, locked in before the plane even takes off, or guided in real time by laser targeting from the aircrew as it falls. And if that laser guidance gets interrupted by smoke, weather, or sudden evasive movement, the bomb automatically defaults back to its last confirmed satellite coordinates instead of just tumbling off course. That's not a small technical footnote. That kind of built-in backup is the difference between a strike that misses and a strike that still lands exactly where it needs to, even in messy, unpredictable combat conditions. None of this appeared overnight either. Bunker-busting weapons have a long history, tracing back to lessons learned decades ago when heavily fortified command bunkers needed to be destroyed, and existing bombs simply weren't strong enough. Every single generation since then has followed the same pattern. One side builds deeper, the other side builds a weapon that goes deeper still. What makes this moment different is how quickly that gap just closed, and how specifically this weapon was built for the exact depth range Iran was counting on to keep its missile stockpile safe. And this apparently isn't even the first time this bomb has been used in this campaign. Earlier reports describe similar strikes hitting hardened coastal facilities believed to house missile systems threatening shipping routes nearby. What we're watching now isn't a random, isolated event. It looks like a deliberate shift, moving from coastal targets toward deep inland production and storage centers, expanding steadily instead of stopping. Before we go further into what this actually means for the region, let's pause for a second. If this kind of breakdown, the kind that explains the why instead of just showing you an explosion clip, is useful to you, do something small right now. Comment one word describing how you'd feel if you were the commander watching this footage come in. It helps me understand exactly who's watching. And it helps push this video to more people trying to actually understand this conflict instead of just scrolling past headlines. Now here's the part that goes beyond just physical damage, because there's a psychological layer to this that's honestly just as important as the explosion itself. For decades, going underground wasn't just a defensive tactic. It was treated as a guarantee. An entire military doctrine was built around the belief that depth equals safety, full stop. When a weapon proves that assumption wrong again and again, it doesn't just destroy one building. It quietly destroys the confidence behind every other buried facility across the entire country. Imagine being a commander responsible for a different underground site right now, watching this footage, knowing your own bunker was built using the exact same assumptions. So how has Iran actually responded to all this? Publicly, the language coming out of Tehran has been forceful. Officials have condemned these strikes as reckless acts of aggression, warning that this will permanently reshape the region's security and promising a completely new defensive posture going forward. That's the message for the cameras. But underneath that messaging sits a much harder truth. The sites getting hit over and over aren't random buildings. They're directly tied to Iran's ballistic missile program, a capability built up over roughly 4 decades as the country's primary source of strategic leverage. Every successful strike against that network isn't just infrastructure damage. It's a permanent loss of exactly the capability Iran has depended on to project power and negotiate from strength. So when you hear defiant statements from officials, remember they're being delivered while the actual foundation behind those statements keeps getting chipped away, strike by strike. That response hasn't stayed limited to words either. Iran's naval forces publicly declared the Strait of Hormuz closed to international shipping, threatening any commercial vessel that attempted to pass through. Not long after that declaration, there were reports of an attempted drone strike against a commercial tanker moving through the strait at night. According to defense officials, both drones were intercepted before reaching the ship, and the tanker continued safely on its route. And that one incident represents just a fraction of the hundreds of commercial vessels still moving through that same waterway every single day under naval escort. This detail matters more than people realize, because it shows the massive gap between announcing a blockade and actually enforcing one. Declaring a strait closed creates immediate panic. It spikes insurance costs for shipping companies, rattles global energy markets, and generates headlines around the world, all before a single ship is actually stopped. That panic is often the entire point of the announcement. But when ships keep sailing through day after day with military escorts standing by, the practical weight of that threat starts to collapse. Shipping companies and insurance underwriters make decisions based on what's actually happening on the water, not press releases. And right now, what's happening on the water is that traffic keeps moving. This also tells us something about how carefully both sides are managing this conflict. Iran appears to be leaning on long-range drone strikes and public statements rather than risking a direct, large-scale naval confrontation, likely because a full engagement would heavily favor the other side. Meanwhile, the response has stayed focused on defense and proportionate action, intercepting direct threats without escalating into a broader assault on coastal military infrastructure. Both sides seem to be trying to project strength without triggering the kind of full-blown regional war that neither one actually wants right now. But that balance is fragile, and it wouldn't take much for one strike that gets through to completely change that calculation. Now let's look at the diplomatic side, because honestly, this is where things get genuinely confusing, and confusion here tells its own story. Reports recently suggested a ceasefire agreement was close to being finalized, with core terms reportedly agreed upon at senior levels, and final details expected shortly after. Then, within hours, conflicting statements from Iranian leadership pushed back hard, insisting no final agreement existed and denying that an end to the fighting was close. Contradictions this sharp rarely happen by accident. They usually point to real cracks inside a government's leadership structure. It suggests some factions genuinely want a deal, mostly just to stop the ongoing destruction of their military infrastructure, while other more hardline voices either refuse to accept that publicly or were deliberately kept out of the conversation until the very last moment, when one part of a government is quietly negotiating an exit, while another part publicly denies any talks are happening. That's not unified leadership. That's a system under enough pressure that its internal disagreements are spilling out into public view, whether they want that or not. There have also been sharp accusations of leaked or distorted versions of draft agreements being shared with international media, alongside strong condemnation of continued drone attacks on shipping. Whatever the exact political wording ends up being, the underlying reality is simple. Trust between both sides right now is basically non-existent, and everyone involved knows it. Situations like this almost never collapse all at once. They reveal themselves slowly through small inconsistencies that build up over time. One contradictory statement can be brushed off as a miscommunication. But when contradictions keep stacking up day after day, that pattern tells you far more about what's actually happening behind closed doors than any polished official statement ever will. Governments, under this kind of pressure, rarely admit it outright. Instead, it shows up in shifting timelines, sudden changes in tone, and denials that don't quite line up with what's actually happening on the ground. If you know what to watch for, that tells you more about where this is really heading than the headlines do. To really understand why this all matters, you have to go back to why Iran built these underground complexes in the first place. Satellite imagery and years of intelligence tracking show that sites like the one near Isfahan were constructed over decades, complete with reinforced storage areas, heavy-duty access roads, and tunnel entrances carved deep into granite mountainsides. From a distance, many of these entry points were designed to blend into the natural terrain, made to look like nothing more than ordinary rock, unless you already knew exactly where to look. The whole strategy relied on having multiple entry and exit routes, allowing missile crews to roll launch systems out, fire from prepared positions, and retreat back underground before any counterstrike could locate them. It was a long-term defensive model built on one core belief. No adversary would have an unlimited supply of expensive precision weapons to spend on every single tunnel entrance scattered across a mountain range. And that same strategy naturally created a strong incentive for deception too. Fake tunnel entrances and decoy structures scattered across these mountain complexes would make total sense, built specifically to pull expensive precision strikes away from the real storage sites. That's exactly why intelligence gathering matters, just as much as the weapons themselves. A precision bomb is only as good as the information guiding it there. Right now, that entire underground strategy is being tested in live combat conditions for the first time at this scale. And here's something that rarely gets mentioned. The Isfahan site isn't some minor storage depot. It's reportedly one of the largest missile production and storage networks in the entire region, built specifically to endure a prolonged air campaign. Records suggest this general area has already absorbed dozens of heavy bunker-buster strikes throughout this conflict. And yet, reports of continued missile-related activity keep surfacing from the very same region. How is that even possible? Because the deepest interior chambers inside these mountains may still sit beyond the reach of even these advanced penetrators. Some core assets might survive an initial wave of strikes, simply because they're buried even further down than the bomb's maximum reach. Fully neutralizing that threat means reaching those absolute depths, not just collapsing the outer tunnel entrances, which is exactly why even heavier specialized weapons keep getting mentioned as the campaign continues to escalate. If you're starting to see how deep this really goes, both literally and strategically, that's exactly the kind of understanding I want this channel to give you. So here's something a little different. Instead of asking you to just tap a button, ask yourself one question right now. Before watching this, did you actually know why Iran built underground instead of on the surface? If the answer is no, that's proof this video just gave you something real. And if it did, the best way to say thanks is simple. Hit subscribe and let the next video find you automatically instead of hoping the algorithm gets lucky. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger pattern behind all of this, because these strikes aren't happening randomly. There's a clear operational sequence unfolding here. The earliest phase of this campaign focused on knocking out early warning radar systems and long-range communication networks, essentially blinding regional air defenses before anything else happened. The next phase shifted toward command and control infrastructure, cutting the links between central leadership and forces out in the field. Now, the weight of this campaign has moved directly onto missile production, assembly lines, and underground storage, striking at the actual core of offensive capability itself. This isn't a series of disconnected explosions happening one after another. It's a deliberately built strategy designed to strip away an opponent's options one layer at a time until there's nothing left to fall back on except a difficult political decision. Which brings us to the real question underneath all of this. What is each side actually trying to walk away with? From Iran's side, the priorities appear to center on securing economic relief, to rebuild what's been destroyed, while trying to protect whatever remains of its missile stockpile and keep the true scale of that damage hidden from public view. The nuclear question remains the single biggest red line in any international negotiation, but the quieter, ongoing fight over the ballistic missile program matters just as much strategically. That missile inventory has functioned as Iran's ultimate insurance policy, backing everything from its drone programs to its influence over regional shipping routes. Destroy that stockpile facility by facility, and the rest of that carefully built strategic position becomes dangerously exposed. That's the real stake behind every one of these mountain strikes, and it's exactly why these locations keep absorbing repeated, heavy attacks instead of just one. Stepping back even further, this conflict is quietly revealing something much bigger about the future of warfare itself. Around the world, military planning is shifting fast toward unmanned systems, robotics, and AI-assisted targeting, with entire new command structures being built specifically around these technologies, placed at the same priority level as traditional military branches. Autonomous drones, swarm technology, and machine-assisted targeting are quickly becoming central to how modern air campaigns are actually fought. We're already seeing early signs of this in the field, including automated systems reportedly supporting search and rescue operations for downed air crews. This matters because building dedicated commands around these technologies means permanent shifts in funding, training, and long-term military doctrine for years to come. What's unfolding in these mountains today is only one piece of a much larger transformation already underway. So where does all of this actually leave us right now? On one track, a relentless physical campaign keeps accelerating, with specialized weapons steadily dismantling Iran's underground missile infrastructure piece by piece. On another track entirely, signals of possible negotiation and clear internal disagreement are unfolding at the exact same time. That's not a contradiction. That is exactly what extreme pressure looks like from the inside, a system absorbing serious damage to its most valuable assets while trying to hold itself together in public. Meanwhile, commercial ships continue moving through the Strait of Hormuz every day under constant naval protection, proof that even amid all this tension, daily global trade hasn't stopped. Conflicts at this scale almost never end with one clean, sudden resolution. They end messily through overlapping tracks of military pressure and political maneuvering that often contradict each other before any final outcome takes shape. Seeing a facility get hit hard one day, hearing about a near-finished diplomatic deal the next, and then watching that same deal get denied a few hours later might look like total confusion from the outside. But that pattern is often the clearest possible sign that sustained pressure is pushing a leadership structure right up against its breaking point. For decades, hiding weapons deep inside a mountain was treated as the ultimate form of protection, something almost untouchable. Right now, inside those very same mountains, that entire belief is being tested and broken in real time. Years of concrete, hundreds of feet of solid rock, and a core assumption that sheer depth alone would guarantee safety are all colliding with a new generation of weapons built specifically to prove that assumption wrong. And that's really the lesson sitting underneath everything we just walked through. Every defense ever built on the idea that something is simply unreachable eventually meets the moment someone finally builds the tool designed to reach it anyway. Isfahan isn't just a headline about one explosion in the desert. It's a live demonstration of that lesson playing out in real time, mountain by mountain, tunnel by tunnel, one collapsing assumption at a time. So here's my real question for you, and I actually want your honest answer in the comments. Do you think strikes like this push toward a faster diplomatic resolution because the cost of continuing simply becomes too high? Or do you think this only pushes both sides further apart, since public pride rarely allows for a quiet, quick surrender? Write down your answer before you scroll past this video, because I genuinely read through these and I want to know how you're reading this moment. If this video actually helped you understand something you were confused about before you clicked play, that's the entire reason this channel exists. Hit like if it helped, subscribe if you want the next one delivered straight to you, and share it with the one person you know who's still trying to make sense of what's happening in the Middle East right now. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Stay sharp, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.